One question today, and only one question. Why does every man need to be in a peer group?
I'm going to answer from peer group protocol, which is experience share.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you why I need a peer group.
Okay.
And then from there, I can share with you why I believe the world would be a better place. So I've said this many, many times. You've heard me say this, that I would be divorced and bankrupt if it weren't for my peer groups. I entered my first peer group in 1997. I was 27 years old. I thought I knew everything, and I thought I had the world by the balls, and I was failing in my relationship. My business was a house of cards. I was only 2 years into a construction company. My relationship with my father was certainly not functional. Unknowingly, I had a lot of resentment towards my mom for a bunch of abandonment issues earlier in life. I was a philanderer. I was a liar. And so begun my journey. And probably didn't understand the significance of mentors, although I had them, coaches, teachers, certainly dad, grandpa, stepdad over the years. But, for me, it was, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And I would say in my case, peer groups became that ultimate master. Through my experience, starting in 1997 with Sterling Institute of Relationship, all the way up to Tech, which is now Vistage, where I began there in 1998, 1999. 2005, I joined EO, and I think I became really just an addict of the peer group process. And as I learned more, evolved more, grew more, started to repair relationships, started to become, more of the man that I had always dreamt of becoming. I took on, bigger roles. I carried heavier backpacks, and my marriage suddenly, was looking different to me and going in a different direction. My mentors had changed. I started to build some confidence in terms in my own life, and it saved me. It truly saved me. So if I'm an example of what peer groups can do for men, then yes, I believe all men in our world need a peer group.
So I want to talk about my sister, because we did a podcast together with her a while back, and it's got a lot of traction, especially with a lot of spouses, happen to be women who've reached out to me, texting me, emailing me, or in person have said, man, that was awesome. I want my husband to be in a peer group. So I want to come back to that. But first, I want to mention that when you were talking, I had a little image of 13-year-old Dave Mann, bar mitzvah boy.
Yeah.
Did you have a bar mitzvah?
I did not have a ceremony, but I finished everything else.
Well, that's actually a stupid thing to say for me on my end, because you don't have a bar mitzvah. You are a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
When you're 13 years old,
yeah,
it doesn't matter if you have a ceremony. It's now you are a man.
Yeah.
And there's this sort of cliche, but I think really powerful image where like every parent or grandparent says to their bar mitzvah boy, be a mensch.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think I have to define mensch. It's what it sounds like. It's this embodied man, not just biologically, right, age-wise, but at a deeper level. How the hell do we do that?
Yeah.
Right. Be a man. That's a great charge. How? Show me how. I need experience shares. I need examples. I need role models.
Yeah.
Right. And what you just described to me was the answer to that charge. Be a mensch.
Wow. Thank you, I guess. And I can think of a lot of mensches that I know, and I probably have never certainly put myself in that category. So that could be a me issue for sure. But I know what you're saying because now I know what it looks like. Mm-hmm. I know what I'm aspiring to become. And I think the best way that I ever heard it, and I learned this from a mentor in an early peer group, which was become the man that you've always dreamt of becoming. Mm-hmm. Another mentor, design your life and go live it. Be intentional. Be strategic about how you operate. And certainly at 13, none of that stuff would have resonated with me at all. But through trial and error, and I'm one of those guys that has to, touch the fire to realize that it's hot, sometimes more than once, that became my roadmap. And I know that we all learn differently. But I will say that the way that the peer groups are structured, certainly in the ones that we're involved with, the ones that I've always experienced, it creates that vocabulary, that language, that that confidential space in which men can come and be shoulder to shoulder and find their vulnerability and feel safe to share where they're at. And at the end of the day, ultimately realize they're not alone.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, when I'm talking about when I say, that be a mensch message, which every parent says to every loving, healthy parent says to their kid, to their boy, it's a why, right? Sending us off in a direction, but how? And that's to me where peer group enters in. There's a lot of how do you do these things?
Yeah.
How do you embody those mensch, those those true man qualities? And so you just described both a structure, which I want to get into it because I think men really resonate with the structure of our peer groups. We should say peer groups are a thing. Like you don't have to join a peer group. A peer group is, I would say, two or more people, but in our case, men coming together.
Sure.
It could be drinking a beer or playing golf. Now, I wouldn't say that those are the best, highest version. It could be, it could not be. But I think it's the structure that really elevates it to what I mean by peer group, which is helping you become a mensch. Because I know a lot of golfing dudes who don't become mensches on the golf course. They may, but that's not the point. It might be a byproduct. The point is to go play golf.
So certainly peer groups can be aligned with whatever, your flavor is. I mean, I was part of, quote unquote peer groups at one time where infidelity was the flavor of the day. Overconsumption of alcohol was the flavor of the day.
Right.
Fraternities, sororities, those could, I guess, all be considered peer groups. We talk a lot about as we're doing our training with men's peer groups. The Benjamin Franklin in the 1700s created the Leather Apron Club, and that was 10 of his peers got together to talk about the topics of the day and align themselves. And so there can be some, perceived negative, I guess, energy around peer group. But the peer groups as we know them are really about giving men, again, a safe, confidential environment where they can learn from each other and model behavior to become the men that they want to be. That's what I needed. Yeah. In spite of having, fairly loving parents and a certainly attentive family, and played sports and had coaches and had rabbis and had men that were in my life that I know cared about me. But again, for me it was until the student is ready, the master wasn't appearing. And it took a lot of failure for me to finally find my rhythm, and it was peer groups that got me on the right track.
Right. It was intentional peer groups to help you become the mensch, the man you are. Because again, you're right. When I was lined up at AEPI back in 1990 something, being hazed, that's a peer group. Yeah. I would argue wasn't the healthiest peer group.
Sure.
There were moments when it was beautiful, but men's peer groups, which is the name of our brand, is intentional by design to help us all become the best version of us we can be. And I think that's one of the reasons why our podcast with my sister has gotten so much traction.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of women who listen to this podcast or who will get this podcast and want their husbands to live on purpose.
Well, and my wife would be a great example because the way that the peer group was structured at the time when I really needed it the most, there was an opportunity for spouses to get involved. We actually had a spousal, what we call the spousal peer group. And so it was part and parcel so that there wasn't that mistrust or that insecurity from the spouse. And it wasn't, it wasn't gender specific. We had, in that particular peer group, we had women and men mixed together. But for the purposes of today's conversation regarding men's peer groups, there was an opportunity for my wife to go and learn to be a part of it. And she watched what I was doing. She saw that I was changing. She was happy, but curious. And so she would be one of the spouses that, could certainly champion this conversation and is a huge supporter of it today because she sees I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better, business operator. I'm just a better man.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen, though, is if a spouse, I'm just going to say wife, I'm sure that's not everybody, but it's just easier. When a wife says, I want to send my husband to a peer group, I've seen it go two ways. One, that can go against our sort of ethos and protocol that we don't tell another man what to do.
Sure.
And it's already starting off on the wrong foot.
Sure.
Because now it's, you should go do this.
Yeah.
We're shooting all over from the start.
Yeah.
I have seen, though, that there's a difference when she thinks it would be good for him and he just doesn't yet know about it. Yeah. And she invites him into the conversation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would, my wife understands this vocabulary and I would share this, and it's a little different than how our society typically operates, but we're used to being told what to do. We're used to telling people what to do. And the, you know, I guess the only way to communicate within men's peer groups and our structure is to tell a story, essentially. So, hey, Bob, I was talking to, Susie's wife today, Stan, and he's a part of this peer group, and it sounds like it's really been beneficial to him. And she's raving about, some of the improvements or changes or just how he's operating. It was really interesting, and she just couldn't be happier. And, are you willing to have a conversation with Stan? I mean, that's kind of the experience share mantra that I learned through the process of peer groups. And I was a classic, typical dude that wanted to tell everybody what to do because I thought I knew better. The truth was I didn't know better. I was full of shit.
Yeah.
And until I learned that I could just tell a story and make a suggestion or ask good questions, my leadership was not where it is now. And for me, it's all about how can I become a better man, a better leader, a more effective communicator.
Yeah, shitting on someone never works. I got shitted on yesterday by my psychiatrist. I went in, to kind of check on my meds, make sure I'm all good. And she started shitting all over me. And I'm like, you need a peer group.
Yeah.
Because all I felt was shut down.
Yeah.
Right. All it was telling me, and it was like very specific, I was describing a direction I'm going.
Yeah.
And she said, you should go within this direction within your vision. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'll try it on if you share with me, why that maybe is meaningful to you. But the way it was being framed to me,
yeah,
I could just feel myself going into shutdown mode. And I think peer groups allowed me to pay attention to that as well.
It's a good sign. I was going to say, because you're about 2 years into your peer group experience. Mm-hmm. And 2 years ago, you probably that would have been fairly normal conversation for you. And now I'm really sensitive to it. My kids are sensitive to it. I have a weekly call with my daughters, and we run it 30 minutes, peer group style, and we do a clearing. And as I was into the clearing, I realized I started casting judgment. And I could see my daughter, my older daughter, start to kind of bow up a little bit and put on her, protective vest. And I immediately stopped and I said, this is not about judgment. I apologize for how I framed that. I was saying that I had this experience as you were sharing, this particular story. And I just want to share my experience. And that was it. But that technology, I didn't understand 10, 15, 20 years ago. And even now I'm learning as a 55-year-old man with these two 20-something girls that I need to communicate to them with respect. And the best way I've learned how to do that is by sharing my experiences and never telling them what to do.
Yeah. And I just wanted on the record that, at least I can only speak for myself. I'm also full of shit because sometimes I just don't walk the talk. I'm a work in progress like we all are. So I just realized I just did this to one of my kids who I did something that I thought probably could have been done better. And as you're saying that, I was replaying it in my head going, man, I just shit it all over him.
Yeah.
And I watched him shut down, and there's a better way.
Yeah.
Especially because the bottom line is I want to communicate.
And what comes up for that in me too is as men, we're raised to quote unquote be tough and not be a pussy and the toughest, strongest, biggest survive. And since I've learned all this amazing new technology, I've found new mentors and I've watched other people's leadership styles who I respect, and they operate really from a context of love and kindness. And they're the mentally strongest, emotionally strongest, most, financially successful guys I know. But I've never, ever experienced them telling somebody what to do or raising their voice for that matter.
And the flip side, though, is, I coach men for a living. So I get asked a lot, tell me what to do.
Ugh.
Right. So it's the flip side of it.
The silver bullet.
Right. Yeah. Which is if I'm telling you what to do without being asked, I'm playing God. I know your life and who you are and what you choose. But if you're asking me to make life's decisions for you, you're outsourcing your power.
Yeah.
You want me to play that role for you. And by the way, earlier versions of me, especially when I was a rabbi, just assumed, yes, that's my job.
Yeah. And I'll say for me, the more simple I've made, my day-to-day operating, process, the better my life has become. So, I think about what, my favorite mentor, Warren Rustand, has always said. He said the most successful people he's ever met, and remember, he worked for 5 presidents. He's met Nelson Mandela. He's met Mother Teresa. He'll say the most successful people I've ever met share 2 things and have 2 things in common. That's discipline and consistency. I was lucky enough to be at a keynote that Magic Johnson gave one time. He said the exact same thing. He said, my entire life, I credit to my discipline and my consistency. And so if you can really, or when I started to really own that, and I still struggle with it, it became that simple. So back to the, hey, tell me what to do, because I was in that point too, when I was, on bankruptcy's door and nearing divorce if I didn't change my ways, super unhappy, way overweight, out of shape. That was about the time that, Warren came into my life and helped me realize that, if I just get up every day with intentionality and purpose, and I do that consistently with a level of discipline, things will improve. And it was really hard. In the first 550 days, he had me wake up every morning, or he suggested that I wake up every morning and spend 32 minutes focusing just on that theory of reading, writing, and thinking positive thoughts that will help me set my intention for the day. And that was 2011, 12. That's when my life really started to turn around. Again, without peer groups, I wouldn't have met Warren. So just another nod to the value of networking and meeting strong men.
Right. So it's not telling since we began this conversation with why men could benefit from peer groups, it's not telling the man in your life, your son, your husband, your father, whatever. It's sharing this podcast or something that opens him up, and allowing him to have the ability to choose. And I felt that's what I felt when I was talking to the psychiatrist, is I was losing my free will, because now even if I choose what she's suggesting, I don't feel like it's mine.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like I'm being corralled.
We've talked a lot about, this podcast with Jason Wilson recently, and I believe he's about our age. And you mentioned how kind and measured and loving he was, but yet you could feel his strength. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a great example of what I was talking about earlier with these leaders that I respect, these mentors that I've learned so much from. They're measured, they're calm, they're not reactive. And I believe they've gotten to that point, they've evolved to that point over time, because the results are exactly, what we're talking about here, which is, you don't tell somebody what to do for months, years on end, you're not going to receive that same treatment back. Defensiveness goes away. Sensitivities seem to go away. There's just this level of just peace and love and kindness and communications. And these guys are still kicking ass and changing the world to be better and leading, organizations and making money and really having a positive influence on the rest of us. So back to peer groups, run with structure, run with consistency and with discipline, and staying in the experience share mindset. You can't fail. Men will improve vastly if they're involved.
Far be it for me to correct, your mentor or Magic Johnson. I'm sure I'm not correcting. I'm sure I'm just adding something that they assumed was in there.
Sure.
Discipline, commitment, compassion.
Yeah.
Right. That's the other one. And that does not come easily for me.
Sure.
I am not wired for, that's a go-to strategy. Right. And so I've had to learn this quality, make sure that I'm putting it front and center of my life. One of the things, of the many things I love about peer groups, is that as men, we spend so much time out in the trenches, so much time hunting, so much time competing. It's a zero-sum game. If I win, somebody loses. Yeah. That's how men are wired, from the ball field to the boardroom, like everything in between. And then you create a space where that goes away.
Yeah.
There is no competition. It can't be a zero-sum game. This has to be win-win. And that, to me, that only comes because of that last C, that compassion.
Yeah, and I agree. And I've been accused of lacking empathy, so along those same lines as well. And it is hard for me. It's super linear. I can this is my 28th year of being involved with peer groups, and I remember in the beginning it was just aggravation and frustration and ego and testosterone and did I say anger? I was very angry. And now I don't feel anger. I just feel a softness and an understanding. And we talked about this earlier today, that impatience still haunts me. If I'm with a man who is not trusting the process, or is afraid to make the commitment, or is afraid to be vulnerable, I find myself becoming impatient. So to your point, this is a great reminder that I'm still need to work really hard on my compassion and my empathy, and be a better listener.
I'm going through that too because, I want to scale up men's peer groups for one reason. I think every man should, there I go again, should. Every man could benefit from being in a peer group, and I just want to share it with as many men as possible. And there's a lack of patience. I mean, we're both wired as Enneagram 8s.
Yeah.
So our default setting is probably urgency or intensity or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I really have to work on that word patience. And I love this. The word patience comes from the Latin root pati, which means suffering. Can I hold the suffering?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's suffering for me not to do this faster, not to get him into the process sooner when he's not trusting the process, as an example.
We just want him to say yes.
Right. And I got to hold the suffering as an act of love so that it opens the door.
I'm challenged by that because based on my own experience, I know that this will have a positive effect on every man. I have not met a man yet, I guess, save for, somebody that has some really severe mental health challenges where, maybe they need a professional in advance or in conjunction. Or in conjunction. Yeah. But I'm with you right away. And there was a guy that said, early on for me, he said, if you believe everything I say, you'll have a better experience. And immediately half the room was like, well, we don't know you. We don't trust you. We don't believe you. Typical man speak, right? Ego. How do you know more than I do? Well, you just paid money to come listen to this guy talk. And all he's suggesting is trust the process. Just believe everything I say and you'll get more out of it. Now you can leave here and say, it didn't work, or it's not for me, or I'm not a fit. No problem. But to I guess, push back before you've even experienced it, you have to experience men's peer group to understand how they operate, in my opinion, which is why, we run a mock peer group to get as a kickoff for, interested candidates. Right. From there, my expectation, because I'm an 8 and I'm impatient, is everybody should sign up. We're going to make your life better. We just explained it to you. So that's a challenge for me.
Yep. Hold the suffering.
Yeah.
One of the things that you keep talking about, so let's dig into it, is structure. Ariella, my wife, she's got an entirely different client base than I do. They're women, they're spiritual seekers. She runs what are called circles, soul circles. Mm-hmm. Similar concept, bringing women together who are peers to share over, spirituality. But it's lacking structure by my standard. We've talked a lot about this. What she believes is women don't need or want the structure the way men need or want the structure. Yeah. I know that women are in EO and YPO, but the percentages are not 50-50. Right. And I do believe women naturally gather, right, far more readily all throughout their life than men naturally gather. Yeah. It's been proven. That's one of the reasons why male suicide is 80% of all suicides. Right. Because women have checks and balances and friends.
And
community. I've counseled so many men who are older, 60, 70, 80, who tell me they don't have any friends. They have acquaintances and this and that, but they were always leaning on their wife's social networks. Yeah. And so I think that men really are hungry for community. We can talk about that, but it's got to also be a structured community. Yeah. Because I've seen both the lack of structure not working. I think overstructured probably is a problem too. So finding that sweet spot, let's talk a little bit about structure.
So as you're saying that, my experience has been that I need accountability. My wife doesn't want it, nor will she allow it. And so thus she doesn't need it. I can attempt to hold my daughters accountable for, finances, commitments, responsibilities. But beyond that, I am really trying to disconnect even on those matters because of, our operating systems are so different. So, it would be a futile exercise for me to even attempt to invite my wife into an accountability conversation. It's just not how she operates. Now, I would submit that she has more friends than any person I know. She's more supported, certainly than I am, and than most people that I know. And she has a really happy, fun existence with her community, with her social network. Mine doesn't feel so clean. Mine doesn't feel as easy. And I feel like I have friends and I have peer groups, and I certainly have men that I can call and have conversations with. But I have to create that accountability for myself. I have to have a start time and an end time, and I have to think about it, and I have to, be intentional about my calendar and my day. And she just doesn't need it. It's just not how she operates. So it took me a long time to get to that point. I can, say to you now that our relationship is better because I learned that the hard way. I stopped trying to hold her accountable. I'm working hard to certainly learn that with my daughters. I have an 82-year-old mom that doesn't necessarily follow through on her responsibilities, and I have to pick up the pieces. And, that's a disappointing aha moment too for me as her only child. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I think to just boil it down, it's men need accountability and women don't.
Yeah. And I would also add to accountability the word commitment. And we could go down a whole biology path and 50,000 years of wiring. Women are wired for commitment. By definition, they can have a baby.
That's true.
Right? There's a commitment that is organic within inside of them. Men struggle far more with commitment. Certainly 50,000 years ago, I would argue to this day and age, and that men need to learn what commitment means. And I do believe peer group is really reinforcing that.
The analogy I've always used tongue in cheek with my wife when talking about infidelity is I grew up on a dairy farm and we had 600 milk cows. We had 2 bulls. So, this goes beyond the human world, I mean, even in the animal world, we live by a lot of elk in Sedalia where I live. And, there's 2, 3, 4 bulls fighting for a herd of 30, 40, elk cows. So crude analogy, but yeah, I had a problem with commitment. I know other men that have had problems with commitment, and through the power of peer group and mentorship and really just wanting to be a better version of myself, was I able to figure out how to be truly committed to my spouse. And by the way, since I have learned those lessons, my marriage is the greatest, really accomplishment of my life.
Yeah, it's commitment at this deepest level. It doesn't just mean like getting married or being faithful. It's really, your word is your bond.
Yeah.
Have you ever listened to the book or read the book, The 4 Agreements?
Yes.
Yeah. So the first agreement is impeccability. Be impeccable with your word.
Paulo Coelho?
No, that's Miguel Ruiz.
Yes, sorry.
And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word.
We talked about this. That's where it came from. Yes.
As an aside,
beautiful.
It comes from the book of John 1:1, the other tradition, Christian tradition, and it says, "In the beginning there was the Logos, the Word," and Viktor Frankl took logotherapy from that. In the beginning there was the Logos. Logos is word, it's meaning, it's this, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Be impeccable with that.
Yeah.
It's commitment at the deepest level. And I've seen this when men go through the peer group experience, they learn how to commit to other men.
Yeah.
Right. In a non-transactional way. Like, there's nothing in this for me. This isn't a business transaction. I'm not going to get laid. Sorry. There's no sexual transference stuff here. It's pure. My bond, my word is my bond. So I will not be late. I will not miss a meeting. I will fly back from France. I'm there with my family. Guys have done that.
Yeah.
It's that impeccability with your word.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's beautiful. And I'm so glad you reminded me of where I had, learned that. Because I love it. And the today's version of me can own that, can, really commit to it. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I get it. I own it. I want it. And my ego was in the way of operating that way, 20, 25 years ago, maybe even 15. And I'm ashamed of that, man, too, quite frankly. I'm still processing how I operated before I understood this technology. But I don't think anything needs more to be said, to a fully evolved man, especially a man in peer group, that we are operating on that understanding that we are impeccable with our words.
I love it. So that's I call them the 4 C's. I'm adding that one, and we have 3 more C's. So another one is confidentiality.
Yeah.
Right. And when I was a rabbi, That was part of my job. Even it's not necessarily formal to Judaism, confession,
Yeah.
although it is part of our tradition. Most people don't realize that. We don't have the booth or anything, but my office was a confessional,
Yeah.
and still is. I mean, I'm a men's coach. That's what I do. And men need to have confidential spaces. Sometimes they're called safe spaces. I prefer brave spaces, where they can come in and they know that these four walls can hold whatever is shared in here and nothing will penetrate them. And I think that that's a revelation in our society for men to not only have that, but to have that in a group with other men.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's setting the culture too, right? Because I've experienced men not holding confidentiality. I'm sure there was times in my life before I was involved with peer groups where I was not holding confidentiality, maybe even since, I just can't recall. A great way to explain that we talk about a lot in training is, nowhere, nothing, never. Like just absolutely, my word is my vault. What I learn inside of a peer group, it stays in the peer group. Now, if there's something that I can apply to my own life, experience sharing, punctuality, and being impeccable with my word, of course, we're going to take that into the outside world. But that's my story. It's my interpretation. If you have an experience that, along those same lines, it's not for me to go tell that story. And I had a peer group mate say that to me one time. He felt like I was in a social setting, maybe sharing more than was appropriate based on a story that he had shared with me. He said, look, just to clarify, it's my story to share. So if anybody asks you about that particular situation, that's your explanation. Hey, it's not my story to share. You'll have to ask that person. And that clarified it for me big time.
And a lot of people think, confidentiality is sort of broad strokes, but it really is those sort of little moments. When I go home from a peer group and Ariella asks me, what we talk about, which she doesn't do anymore. She did the first time or second time, but
which is natural.
And my response is, right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it. And so on the one hand, it's frustrating to her a little bit at the beginning, but now she loves it because she knows if I'm doing that, the other men are doing that. And of course I talk about her because it's my marriage and it's the most important thing in my life. And so it's given her relief that I have a space that I can confess whatever that means to me, get it out, say the hard things, hear the hard messages, and know that these are impenetrable borders.
And what I hear you saying is you're setting or changing the culture for how your family operates. And so suddenly that, I guess just that, that culture that you've set there will start to, emanate. Is that the right word? It'll start to just marinate on the household and maybe your kids. And now suddenly there's a piece around that's changed, that everybody is learning from that experience and operating differently in their own lives. Marination is probably the best word I can think of, but the calmness and the lack of chaos in my household, since we've really learned and grown through peer groups, it's 180 degrees difference. And again, that's the man I want to be. So will I get there by the time I take my last breath? Probably not, but I'm working really hard, and I won't stop working. I won't stop learning or growing in this context.
Totally. And let's go on to another C, but I want to wrap this one up because confidentiality, again, she knows I have a place to get it out.
Yeah.
That's safe, that's brave, that I can release the steam as an 8. I have a lot of anger.
Yeah.
It builds up. And now that I have a peer group, I come back, the steam is gone.
Yeah.
The kettle's not boiling over.
Yeah.
And so she sees the best version of me because I've taken it to a space where my men can hold it for me.
Yeah.
In the past, I might have brought everything or too much to her.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's causing her suffering for something that she's too close to.
Yeah.
She can't hold. It's not hers. And so I am a much better husband because of the commitment qualities that I've learned, because of the confidentiality qualities.
And again, this conversation, there's been books written about it. And so I totally get it, but there's just no space for some of the things that I used to share with my wife anymore in our relationship, and vice versa. And, she'll joke about it. She'll go, I know you're not one of the girls, but I just have to ask you if you're willing to listen. Or she'll say, do you want my advice or do you want me to experience share? These are all monumental changes since our, beginning in peer group. And so our operating system has changed just again, 180 degrees from where we started. We learned how to write a family rules. We learned how to write a family operating system. We learned as a family how to write our mission, vision, and value statements. The children who are now 28 and 21 have grown up, at least since they were, since let's call it 2005, learning and watching how mom and dad are trying to improve, knowing that we're not perfect, and asking for forgiveness and trying to share a lot of these lessons you're talking about now, which hopefully has set the stage for how their culture will be in their family someday. And again, for us, we had to break the cycle. We came from a lot of family dysfunction, and we wanted to not, I guess we did introduce it, but we didn't want our children to think that's the way that, that mom and dad learned to live. And so now that's how we're going to know. Mom and dad taught us that they can change the way that they operate, and therefore so can we.
It's beautiful. So for the women listening, it's about your father, husband, son becoming the best version that he can be.
Yeah.
And it's about you as a woman relating to that man and helping him become the best version if he can be. Ariela's done the same thing. She now will get away from the shoulds and more into the experience share.
Yeah.
And now I can hear more, and we're in an upward spiral, which I guess is, a couple other things I want to touch on. Clearing, communication we've been talking about, but one of the other C's is clearing.
Yeah. And really quick, the ego, defensiveness, sensitivities have virtually evaporated from 95% of the interactions in our household. It's really beautiful. And everybody has context on how to deliver their messaging or ask for help in a different way.
So that's the C in clearing. Obviously, I'm rereading the 4 agreements for like the 60,000th time. The second agreement is don't take things personally. It's never about you. It's always about the other person.
Yeah.
And this is the clearing. So at the beginning of all of our peer groups, we go around and we say, Dave, I'm clear with you. Cam, I'm clear with you. So on and so forth. I'm clear with the group.
Yeah.
Or we say, I'm not clear.
Yeah.
And then we come back to it. I love clearing. So take us into clearing.
Yeah. It's a really different, unique technology that, again, we learn through peer groups. And I suppose to dumb it down, we were raised to apologize if you wrong somebody, maybe ask for forgiveness if you were evolved enough, or if your parents were evolved enough to teach you that. And clearing just creates a less emotional process to do the exact same thing. So as an example, if I'm feeling sad about something that you said to me, it has nothing to do with what you said to me and everything to do with how I reacted to that. So I may share with you, hey, B, I felt like you were a little hard on me the other day. And so I just want to let you know that I felt really sad. And, I spent a little time, probably feeling a little sorry for myself. And so I just want to let you know that I didn't feel good in that particular moment.
Okay. So then the natural reaction, right, before a peer group, or if you're outside of a peer group, is I didn't say anything. That's not what I said.
Yeah.
Right. That's the natural reaction.
Yeah.
Or the flip side is, well, you did the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, we're going to flip it. And I'm notorious for this.
Yeah.
Like as an 8, that was my MO in my marriage for a long time, is flip the script.
Yeah.
Because I can out debate her any day of the week.
Yeah. We got more energy to fight.
And then Ariela would shut down because it hurts.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to bring to me. And then I'm growing in arrogance and I'm not hearing the hard things.
And when it comes to my relationships specifically, so not men to men in a peer group, but men to woman, a husband to wife. In my particular case, my wife would soften the minute I shared how I felt versus me pointing the finger at her of what I believe she did to create that feeling in me. So it might be, hey, when you came in today, there was an energy that I put me on edge, and I felt like maybe you were upset about something. And so as a result, I was feeling sad and not understanding what was going on, versus, man, you came in today like a bitch. You're yelling, you're slamming doors. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I probably had that conversation more than once in the old days. Well, it just diffuses the situation by telling her how I felt. And so it's created so many beautiful moments for us. And again, 28 years ago, I would not have been able to understand how beautiful and connected and deep and soulful my relationship has become. And it's all part and parcel because of this technology.
Yeah. So this clearing, you don't have to, you shouldn't respond. Like if you just shared that as a clearing with me that I made you feel bad or whatever, uh, again, I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to explain myself. I just have to receive it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's nice if I can say, hey, I'm sorry, but that's not necessary.
And it's not what we're looking for. We're just looking to be heard, right? So got to bring it up. But as one of my famous mentors used to say, being listened to feels so much like being loved, I can hardly tell the difference.
Can we insert a sound effect on ching?
Yeah, like a rim shot. The guy that told me that, his name was Jay Chalmers, and I'm not sure where he got that from, but he was an amazing mentor and a very loving and kind man that really taught us a lot. He's one of those mentors that I talk about that, that really changed the game for us. And so being conscientious of being a good listener has also really enhanced my communication skills. At the end of the day, I just want you to hear me, and then I want to hear you. And it just diffuses that ego.
Yeah. And so in that moment, even when I'm saying, if I say I'm sorry, it almost diminishes it, I think, in my experience, because now I have to fix it. That's a fixing.
Yeah.
And you're not asking me to fix it.
Right.
You're asking me to receive it and hold it.
And this is where my wife is so good about, are you looking for me to just hear you? Or would you like to hear some feedback from me? And she gives me that option, and she does it in a non-ego way. And I appreciate it. And so then if I say, I would like to hear some feedback, or I would like to hear an experience share, she's totally, settled me into a safe, loving, trusting place. Again, that's exactly what men's peer groups do.
I love it. I think Ariella would say something more like, do you want me to listen, or you want me to tell you why you're a dick?
But you're evolving. She'll stop saying that eventually.
Yeah, coming back to clearing, I can't say strongly enough. I give it to every guy who walks out of my office one-on-one to take this into his life, because here's what I've seen in my own experience is I'll say it doesn't bother me, right? Because I'm not supposed to let things bother me because I'm tough.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell Joe Schmo in my peer group that it really actually did hurt that he didn't return my phone calls.
Yeah.
And so I'll just hold it and I'll eat it. I won't want to give him that. I won't want to look weak. And then it builds up and it's like static electricity, right? It gets worse and worse and worse. And you could just feel the charge. Yeah. And what a clearing does is it's like when you touch, with the static, it just releases the charge when it's little. And it still maybe hurts a little, but you can handle it. And if you just keep releasing the charges, then the relationship is healthier, the group dynamic is healthier, and that tension, that anger buildup isn't there.
And for me, it's that bully mentality that we've all, either been or fought against or, felt persecuted by, whatever it may be, versus today, the strongest leaders that have surrounded myself with and the people I admire the most, have zero bully in them. And it's all about coming from a place of communication, a place of curiosity, be curious, not judgmental, as we talk about a lot. And I melt, when a strong man can communicate effectively how they are feeling based on an experience that was maybe uncomfortable. That's the strongest, most badass thing I've ever seen. And that's the guy I want to be.
And also for me to do it in micro moments, not macro.
Yeah.
Not like this big moment where we have to have the sit down, but like as it arises. Like you're good at this. I sent a text to you and Cam, and I I didn't soften it, and I heard it as soft, but it wasn't received as soft.
Yeah.
And you texted back saying something like, this is what maybe could have been said.
Yeah.
And it was just this moment of realizing my words, my actions impact people in a way that I don't realize.
Yeah.
And I want to create a space where I can be told those hard things, right? Say the hard things and and hear the hard things.
Yeah.
And we don't always live in a world where, especially as men, that, put it this way, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right. And to be able to hear the hard things and say the hard things as they arise before they become mountains, game changing.
It's scary too. We're talking about thousands of years of evolution and of, protective warrior mentality. We can talk about it generationally, but I know 80 somethings that are still stuck in that ego mode. And I know 80 somethings that are soft and loving and kind and can still lead and communicate, in the ways in which we're talking about it. I don't think there's never an excuse to not continue to learn and grow. And that's for me what we're talking about. I haven't, we've learned all this from others. We're trying to share this information with those that are interested. Again, the impatience and the frustration for me is if a man says no or doesn't trust that we're sharing, I'm just kind of like, I can't deal with that. I got to move on. So that's what I'm working on. Like, how can I communicate in a way with somebody who isn't as excited about what I have to share, in a softer way? And so to your point, I'm practicing that. If I'm responding to you in a way that you took as a learning moment, that's just me trying it on for size. And, I haven't perfected it. I'm still acting shitty at times, I know. But it sure is fun when I'm in the moment, in the micro moment, to catch myself, to realize what I've done and how I've, acted, like with this clearing with my daughter the other night. I caught myself in the moment of, I can tell she's not receiving what I'm intending to share. And so, hey, let me apologize. Let me start over again. Really what I was trying to say. Or I love when somebody says to me, help me understand what you meant by that. Or are you open to a suggestion that I've noticed? Or can I share something with you that I've observed? That's soft speak that's strong as shit in the end.
And that's a good ending point, but that's also a good segue to another podcast we're going to do where this isn't about becoming a nice guy, right?
Yeah.
This is about becoming a compassionate warrior.
Yeah.
Somebody who can hold the warrior's strength to take care of his family, his community, his responsibilities, his duties on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah.
With compassion and love in his heart, versus the nice guy, which is the opposite of the asshole.
Yeah.
Right. And both of those are reaction, survival. I work with assholes and I work with nice guys.
Yeah.
And everything in between. But that's not where this is headed.
Yeah.
And I want to have a whole conversation on that.
And again, that nails home the point that peer groups can help you, kind of study that, research that, figure out where you fit on that spectrum, start to answer some of the questions of maybe why things aren't going the way you wish they were going. It's the round peg, square hole mentality that we see with men over and over again because they can't get their ego out of the way of their commitment to trying to live a better, more fulfilling life. Right. And because of peer group, I've been able to practice that real time with men that care about supporting me and then taking it out into my real life and certainly living, a life beyond my wildest dreams.
One more point, and that is, you reminded me, that's why it's also important to just have peer groups sort of randomly or divine timing and evolve. Because when we try to place guys into groups, like we're assuming we know what a guy needs. Yeah. And the nice guy and the asshole in the same group need to learn
for sure
from each other. And that's why, the pureness is being men.
Yeah.
It used to be for us middle age and onwards, but we've just softened that to say, like 20 something onwards. So the pureness is being a man in your age demographic thereabouts, but not trying to break it down to Enneagram type and personality, because we have a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah. I lost 3 men last year that all took their own lives, all in their early to late 50s. And they were all men that, lost hope, that I assume felt lonely. And of course that, really hurts. And obviously it's crushing for their loved ones that they left behind, because all we want to do is be supportive to one another and love one another and, create a better future for all of us and be aligned. And I just think the men's peer group community is further down that road for those that, have the balls to say, I trust the process, I'm in.
And I'll end with, that's why we are calling this 13 minutes, why every man needs a why. Some people have said it's not 13 minutes, it's 50 minutes long, and it was. But during this 50 minutes, 3 men have killed themselves in America.
That's right.
That's the statistic, every 13 minutes. And we've set out to, at least my mission is, and I know you'll join me in this, is to push it back to 14 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think I can change the world, but I know we can push this back to 14 minutes. And that means that 2,888 men this year alone, if we push that back to 14 minutes, will choose life. And I believe that peer groups, maybe not the only pathway to do it, but certainly a pathway to do it.
And we both know men who have considered taking their own lives, who are in peer groups, who have said, because of this community, it's changed the way that I look at myself and others. And now it's the furthest thing from my mind. So, there's the victory for me. And yes, if we can save men's lives, then peer groups are a beautiful thing.
Amen. And I'll just say this to anybody listening. That's our 13-minute mission, to do just that, to get men into peer groups, to save their lives on every single level. So please share this with a man in your life, and we'd be honored to receive him into our peer groups. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, man.
Love this. Let's keep it going.
I appreciate you.